Hello, everybody. This is Dominic Palmer. Welcome to our second community forum. Good afternoon. We're going to do a short presentation followed by answering questions. In a couple seconds, I'll turn it over to our board president. I'd just like to thank our building administrative team who are present on Zoom, and our central office administrative team who are in the room with us. We also have Dr. Nancy Kaplan, our board president, present in the room. Dr. Kaplan?
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our second community forum. Just to give you a sense of what to expect, and then I have a few requests. Dr. Palmer will be giving a presentation that will give a good overview of what the return to school will look like. And then we will take questions that have been sent in this afternoon. I'm monitoring the questions. I will be trying, in some cases, to group them together. We'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. Just from yesterday's forum, one of the things that I would say is that if you could hold your questions until after the presentation, that would be helpful, because many of the questions that we're getting are going to be covered by what the superintendent will talk about. I will let you know that there are some issues that we are still working to figure out, and so in those cases, we'll let you know what those issues are. But in advance, I thank you for the questions. It's good to see some people who were with us last night back for the matinee, and everything that you contribute will make us stronger as we prepare for the first day of school. So with that, I'll turn it over to our superintendent.
Okay. I just thought I'd also mention, we looked back, and I think we had well over 1,000 people who viewed it, probably well over 500 who viewed the meeting while we were in session, and I guess many other people looked at it after. Let's just talk a little bit about the process of how we came to today. Basically, before school was even permanently closed for last school year, we began the planning process for reopening. First, it was a plan to discuss reopening before the end of the last school year. Then it became the beginnings of a plan for reopening in September. In the end of June, we put together a committee of stakeholders that included board members, parents, teachers, administrators, and support staff to discuss the plans to reopen. We formed 10 subcommittees that met regularly over a few weeks to discuss a variety of aspects of a reopening plan. We developed plans by following the SED, the State Education Department, the Department of Health, and the CDC guidance. We developed and evaluated 3 models: an in-person model, a hybrid model, and a remote model. A couple weeks ago, the governor announced that schools are ready for reopening in person. At that point, we put out a parent survey to get some impressions from parents about whether they would send their children to in-school models or if they would prefer a remote model. We had over 1,200 responses, and about 82% of parents, when asked the question, in-person, full in-person model or remote, about 82% preferred in-person, 17% remote. When asked hybrid versus remote, it was in the upper 80s, said they would send their child to school, and the number of remote children decreased. The purpose of that survey was not to question people's preferences and which version they would prefer, but whether or not they would send their children to an in-person school. As time progressed, we determined that we would be looking at, the PowerPoint, I'm sorry. Set the pause a second while we put up the PowerPoint. So the third slide. Okay, that's the one. So we determined that we were going to start with an in-person model. All students and all staff would report to school in person with a phased-in opening. We would seek reduced bus ridership and develop and enforce a number of enhanced safety protocols. I want to make it very clear, because I think there's been a lot of confusion about this, that the phase-in period, the first 2 weeks of school, is exactly that, a phase-in. It is not a hybrid model. It does not at all align with what would be the hybrid model that we developed during the planning process. It is a period of time where we will bring half the students in and begin the process of getting everybody comfortable with school and reviewing all of our procedures. So the phase-in option will better enable us to acclimate students and staff to school, evaluate and refine building protocols and procedures, assess mental health needs, gauge learning and technology needs of our community. The first day of school, Tuesday, September 8th, in order to give every student the same first day school day and school experience, we split the day into an AM session and a PM session. We are splitting the cohorts alphabetically. If you are an A through L, you're in cohort A. If you are an M through Z, you're in cohort B, and that's AM, PM split. Then from Tuesday, September 9 through Friday, September 18, we will be alternating half the children in the school for the full day at a time. On the 9th, we start off with B. There's a detailed schedule that was sent home to parents and is on the website. I want to note that there's been some questions about Wednesday of the second week and Thursday of the second week. The Wednesday of the second week is indeed an A day, as is the Thursday. That's because we are trying to keep as close as possible to the high school schedule during that period of time. And the Wednesday is a virtual day, and they go back to their other cycle. It also allows us to balance the number of sessions that A and B cohort students have during the phase-in period. Next slide. Procedures and training. We are developing procedures and protocols utilizing the CDC and the New York State Department of Health Department guidance, as well as guidance from the Nassau County Health Department in this planning. Training for students and staff will include, but is not limited to, best hygiene practices, proper use of personal protective equipment, mental wellness and social emotional well-being of students, hallway and classroom transitions, and arrival and dismissal procedures. I want to take a moment to note about the travel quarantine. So as I'm sure you're all aware, New York State has in place a travel quarantine for those who travel to most other countries and a significant number of states in the United States. It is extremely important, it is a law, that if you travel to a state or country on the quarantine list, that you quarantine for the 2 weeks that is required. That is true for staff members and students alike. In order to reopen our schools safely, we will require families to adhere to this advisory. Please pay close attention to your travel locations and dates to ensure that you are able to return to school on time. Students who have traveled to a state on the list would need to start their quarantine on August the 25th. Staff members will need to begin their quarantine on August the 19th, as they will be in earlier than students. If you need to quarantine, whether you are a family or a staff member, please notify the building principal as soon as possible. Thank you. Jennifer?
We need to move the thing, or is it?
Yes, we
Yep.
need to move it.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's what I thought. So health screening. As part of the reopening plan, we must implement mandatory health screenings, including temperature checks of students, faculty, and staff to identify any individuals who may have COVID-19 or who may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. Screening is strongly recommended to be conducted remotely before the individual or staff reports to school. Screening for all students, staff, and faculty must be completed using a questionnaire that determines whether the individual has knowingly been in close or proximate contact in the past 14 days with anyone who has tested positive through a diagnostic test for COVID-19 or who has had symptoms of COVID-19. Tested positive through a diagnostic test for COVID-19 in the past 14 days, has experienced any symptoms of COVID-19, including a temperature greater than 100 degrees in the past 14 days, and or has traveled internationally or from a state with widespread community transmission of COVID-19 per the New York State Travel Advisory that Dr. Palmer just discussed. The health screening and temperature check compliance will be achieved through the My School Badge mobile app. Staff members and parents will be asked to log in every day before they enter school or board the bus to answer the 4 health screening questions and to enter their daily temperature. This information will be transmitted to the appropriate COVID-19 safety coordinator, who will be able to view an exception report of all staff and students who are not in compliance. The safety coordinator or her designee will identify individuals who should not go to school and should be referred to their healthcare provider for further evaluation and COVID-19 testing. In accordance with the DOH guidance document, the specific temperature data of a student or staff member will not be stored or recorded. The district will only maintain records that confirm individuals were screened and the results of such screening, such as the pass or fail. Parents and staff members will receive a registration link to register and download the app, and there will be numerous how-to videos located on the district website.
I'd like to also add that during the phase-in stage, we're going to take temperatures of all students and staff and would determine if that's a practical procedure to do, layered on top of the requirement that everyone takes their temperature before they come to school. Okay, quarantine. There are many questions about quarantining. We will follow the New York State Department of Health guidance and work closely with the Nassau County Department of Health. If a student or a staff member were to contract COVID-19, we will prohibit any employee or student who tests positive, displays symptoms, or has come in close contact with persons who tested positive to enter the school and will send them home with instructions to contact their healthcare provider for assessment and testing. Also, close contacts to a child or staff member will be quarantined as determined by the Nassau County Department of Health. Student education will continue in the event of an entire class being quarantined. The classroom teacher will continue remote education. In the event the classroom teacher is ill, a certified teacher will instruct the children remotely during the time of quarantine, and we will attempt to have minimal disruption to the schedule and implementation of instruction. There will be many scenarios of contact that will arise. In all cases, the Merrick School District will closely work with the Nassau County Department of Health. We will also assist the Department of Health in contact tracing efforts. This would include the notification of potential contacts, such as employees or students who had come in close contact with individuals, while maintaining confidentiality required by state and federal law. Just to give a few examples, because I think these are common examples of things that people question, is if a student in a house, and one of our students is found to be positive with COVID-19, the whole class of close contacts would probably be quarantined by the Nassau County Department of Health. So they would have to stay home. If a teacher was found to be positive, similarly, all the children in that class and other close contacts would be quarantined. A frequently asked question is, a student is sick with COVID-19. His classmates are quarantined. The classmates have siblings. Would they be quarantined too? The answer to that is generally no, because the contacts of the sick child are quarantined, but the contacts of the contacts are not quarantined. Another version of the question is, someone in a student's household has COVID-19. Who gets quarantined? It is likely that the Department of Health will quarantine all the individuals in that household, including our students. But the classmates of our student would not get quarantined unless that student also was found to be positive for COVID-19. So that's two common scenarios. Okay. Face coverings. So face coverings make up a variety of types of coverings. For instance, this is considered a face covering, your typical surgical mask. On the CDC list is bandanas and gaiters. Those are all face coverings that people often call masks. A visor, clear visor, is not a mask. When 6 feet, so the expectation is that everyone will wear masks in school. When 6 feet of social distancing is unable to be maintained, students and faculty will be required to wear face coverings. As per New York State guidance, consideration will be provided for students and staff where face coverings would impair their health or mental health, or where such coverings would present a challenge, distraction, or obstruction to educational services and instruction. And that's basically straight out of the state guidance. Consistent with regulatory guidance, staff must be provided with PPE, and students will be expected to provide their own face coverings. Extra PPE for students will be available at the front door, in classrooms, in the office, in the nurse's office, and on buses. We have bought an abundance of masks in well beyond 10,000 for this purpose. Mask breaks will be provided throughout the day, utilizing barriers. Large indoor and outdoor spaces will also be used. Yeah?
So much thought has gone into designing a classroom environment that is both safe for students, however, allows our teachers and our students to continue to grow as learners, and for us to be able to continue to deliver high level of instruction that Merrick families are accustomed to. We have planned these classes. Our building administrators have done a great deal of work of creating cohorts of students that will remain together throughout the school day in order to minimize the interaction between classes. We are planning for a full implementation of our curriculum that will be supported through grade level meetings if any changes need to be made. Our building administrators have spent a great deal of time in classrooms, and our teachers will begin to spend time in their classrooms setting the structure for appropriate social distancing at a minimum of 4 feet in distance. We are in the process of developing classroom practices and protocols that will limit movement within a classroom, as well as limit movements between classrooms, as well as in the hallway. In addition to the minimum of 4 feet that desks will be apart within a classroom, we have also purchased a desktop barrier for each student in order to increase the safety while in the classroom. These barriers will and could be used during small group instruction, both within the classroom as well as in small group instructional areas, such as reading, math, speech, and other classes that students will attend in small groups. We've allowed teachers the flexibility of designing their rooms with additional furniture and seating options, as long as they are able to maintain the distance that we described within this presentation. That includes areas such as cubbies and laptop carts where students would keep their own supplies, however, go back and forth. As long as appropriate protocols are set up within the class, we are allowing teachers to make those decisions on an as-needed basis. In order to minimize the interaction between students, sharing of supplies will no longer occur. Students will have their own device that they will use for instruction, as well as their own materials that they will use throughout the school day.
To make our hallway transitions safe, as students and teachers move about the building, we're requiring that face coverings be worn at all times, that students and staff maintain social distance, and there will be decals on the floor reminding people to wear a face covering and to keep a safe distance. And the building administrators are currently working on schedules to limit the number of people in the hallway at any one time. Lunch and recess will be 60 minutes this school year. In past years, they were 45 minutes. We added an additional 15 minutes to allow for a proper transition and for cleaning of the spaces so other groups and other students can use it. Each building is currently developing schedules and safety protocols to enable students to eat lunch in the lunchroom as often as possible. All students must bring their lunch and snack from home this year. We are going to follow our procedures consistent with the district allergy policy. And the PTA lunch program will be reevaluated after the start of the school year. As of now, the PTA lunch program has been suspended for September and October. All students should bring a bottle of water to school, and it could be refilled during the points in the day at our bottle fillers. Students will have an opportunity to play outside for recess as long as the weather permits. And outdoor spaces will be designated for grade levels to use for snack and mask breaks. On inclement weather days, large indoor spaces will be utilized for breaks. Our special areas will continue this year. Students will have art, music, library, and tech, PE, and flex. PE will occur in the gym or outside if weather permits. And all of our other special area teachers will push into classrooms. This is to limit the hallway transitions that I spoke about earlier, so that only teachers are moving about the building and students are not. 5th and 6th grade orchestra and percussion instruction will continue, and choral, bass, and wind instrumental instruction will be postponed at this time. We will reevaluate that after the school year begins.
The mental wellness of our students, our staff, and our parents has always been at the forefront of planning in the Merrick School District. Our Merrick Health mental health team is comprised of district-level administrators, building administrators, school psychologists, school social workers, behavior analysts, and our school district counselor. And this group of individuals has been meeting since March during our emergency school closure on a weekly basis, and they continue to do so throughout the summer months in order to best prepare for the return of staff and students to our buildings and to instruction, whether it's in person or virtual. This team is in the process and has done so throughout the spring of curating resources to post on our website, to provide to teachers on an ongoing basis, and to provide to parents as they reach out with questions and concerns of how best to support their child, whether it is socially or emotionally. Currently, we have a group of classroom teachers, special area teachers, and mental health providers that are developing lessons for us to implement during the first month or so of school in the area of community building and how to introduce students to our classrooms in this new way of returning to school. As always, our district mental health staff and building administrators are available to provide ongoing support, whether a child has mandated counseling, has seen the school counselor throughout their time in one of our buildings, or is new to Merrick or new to our school buildings. Our mental health team is here to support any needs your family has, a child has within our building, and or our staff has. The special education supports and services in the Merrick School District is an aspect of our program that we are very, very proud of. Our special education services will be provided to students in accordance with students' individualized education plans as developed by the Committee on Special Education. Academic intervention services, which are determined utilizing a number of measures, will continue to occur both in our in-person programs as well as our remote programs if necessary. Our AIS and non-integrated special education services will continue in a pull-out model. Our committees of teachers felt as though in order to maintain the integrity of the service that we provide, that pull-out model remain in place. With that pull-out model will come additional safety precautions of how students transition to and from services, as well as additional safety precautions within those environments to maintain student health and staff health. Like I talked about earlier, the cohort of students, in our scheduling, we are going to schedule cohorts of students for special education and AIS support services to the greatest extent possible in order to limit exposure. Students will continue to be mainstreamed into general education classrooms as our practice, as well as through IEP mandate. In those circumstances, just like in the past, those students will have their own space within the classroom. They will be integrated just like any other student, and we will take additional safety precautions if necessary. Students in small classes will be in person daily from the first day of school.
The Merrick School District wants to welcome our youngest students to our buildings like we have in the past. We want to provide families with the comfort of knowing the classroom teacher and building support staff is well prepared to support their transition needs. We are currently investigating the possibility of having students and parents visit their classroom prior to the first day of school in person. As we make specific decisions regarding kindergarten transition, additional information will be shared with kindergarten families.
Yeah, we should set up these slides differently so that I don't have to keep on doing that.
Yeah. Like always, and like in the spring, the Merrick Union Free School District is committed to our community to ensuring that all students have appropriate access to a device in order to continue their learning. Currently, the Alternative Voluntary Remote Program has a question on the survey asking parents to acknowledge whether their child needs a device. In those cases, we will provide those devices for remote instruction while students are within the Alternative Voluntary Remote Program. For those parents whose students will be coming to our buildings each day, we will be sending out a survey in the near future asking for you to acknowledge if your child requires a district-provided device, when or if we need to move to remote instruction. In those cases, we will compile a list of students in need, and devices will go home during that phase-in portion of our transition for the first 9 days of school. We do ask that those devices come back and forth each day over the the first 9 days, so your child will have access to a device in the days that they are in school. So more information will be coming out concerning how technology will be sent out with students at the beginning of the school year, and how we are going to determine whether a family is in need of a device.
Thank you. Classroom ventilation. All of our spaces that are air conditioned by either rooftop units or unit ventilators bring in significant amounts of fresh air in accordance with the New York State Facilities Planning Guidelines. Our systems, all the brand new air conditioning and heating systems that were put in last year, and the overhead units, all work to clean the air by bringing in a significant amount of fresh air. In addition, our overhead units are being fitted for the appropriate MERV level filters as recommended. There are some spaces in our building that have recirculating air conditioning systems. There are few of them, and they are primarily in specific offices. In those cases, we'll be adding additional freestanding HEPA filters. It's going to be important that ventilator fans remain on and clear of obstructions, either in front or where the air cuts pulled in, and this will help encourage the recirculating of fresh air. There's often been questions about whether adding fans to classrooms are worthwhile. About 2 weeks ago, in a discussion with the Nassau County Commissioner of Health and the Nassau County Superintendent, he indicated that there was not strong scientific information either pro fans or con fans. There's really not a good reason to add fans into the mix, either to improve circulation, because our ventilators will do that, and there's no specific reason that they will be troublesome. We've had questions the other day about windows opening. Yes, the windows open, we have screens in some of our windows, but more importantly, our ventilators will be bringing in a significant amount of air, independent of whether or not the windows open, and that's really the primary source of making sure fresh air comes into the building. We will, of course, be monitoring all the units, their functionality, and making sure that they're working efficiently. And one of the upsides of having school closed for this long is that we have been doing shakeout work on all the air conditioning units to make sure that they're all functioning appropriately.
We are encouraging parents and legal guardians to drop off or walk students to school to reduce the density on our school buses. After analyzing the transportation survey results, we are planning for one child per seat with all household members expected to sit together. We are rerouting and reconfiguring existing bus runs based on past ridership and survey results. Our current bus ridership will be monitored on a daily basis. Buses will be sanitized in between bus runs with special focus on high contact spots. Masks will be expected to be worn on the bus by all students and staff. Masks will be available for those students who do not have them, and families who are declining transportation are making a year-long commitment.
For those students and their families who are unable or uncomfortable to attend in-person instruction, the district is offering an alternate voluntary remote learning program. This program will be staffed with employees of our school district. We will include approximately 2 hours of daily instruction with their assigned teacher and daily and weekly assignments utilizing available online resources. Families will be asked to commit to a minimum of a trimester for instructional continuity. Students will remain on class rosters in case they're interested in returning back to in-person school. Students who must quarantine on a case-by-case basis will likely be placed in this program. More detailed information regarding the alternate voluntary remote learning program, we will be having a forum specially dedicated on August 20th at 7 p.m. to answer all your questions and give you more specific information.
So I just want to reemphasize that, we're gonna have a forum dedicated to the alternate voluntary remote program, and that is on Thursday evening. We encourage parents who believe that may be the model they're interested in to participate that day. And as we get into the question and answer period in a moment, we will probably not go very in-depth if there's any questions about the alternate remote program. So I just want to remind everybody that we will continue to develop their frequently asked questions based upon questions that are sent to the Merrick reopening email. That will be questions that are sent outside of the windows of the forums. So that'll be updated as necessary. We are having in total 3 virtual community forums. Yesterday we had the first, went quite nicely with a lot of viewers. Today is the second, and as we just mentioned, the final one is on Thursday the 20th at 7 p.m., dedicated to the alternate voluntary remote program. Okay. Now it's time for questions and answers.
It is. So I'm just looking at all of the questions and trying to filter through them to group some of them together. So just a few thoughts. First off, just to reiterate what the superintendent said, questions about the voluntary remote model will be handled separately at that session. I want to put an offer out there that for those of you that have sent in emails with 30, 40 questions, or you've sent in 40 emails with 1 question each, or if you're changing your last name to send in emails, please call the principal of your school so that your concerns can be addressed appropriately. We recognize that this is a difficult time. There's lots of questions to be answered, but it's going to be difficult to address those types of emails in this forum. The last thing I would say, I'm not going to be asking the questions that are asking the district to defend why we are opening school. We recognize that's a very personal decision for families, and we respect everybody for making the decision that's right for them. So with that being said, here's the first question. Would we consider relaxation tunes all day on overhead?
I think, music is a great suggestion. That has to, of course, be balanced with whether it's distracting during the day. The principals are all online. They'll listen. They've heard that comment, and they'll decide where that's appropriate, maybe music in the hallways. I know that at least one of the buildings does their end-of-day bells using music instead of bells.
Great, thank you. If children need to maintain 6 feet of distance when their mask is off, has it been considered that while in the classroom behind plexiglass, every other student at their desk can have a mask break? Can they switch?
So first, and I know this is just a technicality, it's not plexiglass. It's a different type of plastic that's it's polycarbonate. That's a requirement of the state education department's fire codes, but that's just an aside. That, yes, barriers will be used to incorporate mask breaks. So, and I think this is, I was briefly saw a few other questions that may hit this. Students may take mask breaks outside in large spaces, and they may indeed be taking mask breaks behind barriers. This is not going to be a student decides on a mask break. It will be directed by the faculty when students take mask breaks.
Thank you. Somebody's asking, when will they receive an email about how school will work?
That's a pretty broad question. I think there have actually been books written on how school works. But in terms of some of the logistics that are related to the reopening of school, much of the information's in the FAQ presented today, and then the normal coming back to school information about arrivals and dismissals and your food and the myriad of items that usually are sent out will be sent out in the normal time frames by the building administration.
Great. How can you keep first graders playing on the playground? Is it better they wear their mask and will be allowed to socialize?
So I think that every day will be a little different to mix up the different kind of activities that students do while they're outside, and to benefit both from the opportunity for a mask break at some points and the opportunity to socialize at other points.
When will masks come off permanently?
I believe that would be up to the New York State Department of Health. Actually, it'd probably be a recommendation from the New York State Department of Health to the governor, and then it would be directed by the governor.
Okay, there's a question about the schedule that will be followed if we have to go remote. I would say if that happens, details will be delivered to each family regarding the schedule of their child for remote days.
I know there's another question in there that relates to masks. Will parents be required to wear a mask when they come to school? That is by the law, by governor's order, that when you're out in public, you need to wear a mask. So yes, of course, parents would be required to wear a mask when they're on school grounds. And while she's looking for the next question, I'll also mention, because I'm not sure it was really emphasized in there, we are going for near zero visitors into the school. If parents have to come to pick up their children because they're ill or they have an appointment, they would be asked to wait outside or in the vestibule. The letter carrier, the UPS delivery, all that, those people will be kept in the vestibule, and we're going to minimize the number of people coming to school. Volunteers, we're not going to have volunteers in the beginning of the school year until we actually have this a little bit better assessed. So there will be very few people coming into the school other than staff and students.
Okay, I'm reading a question, and the question is intimating that if we have to continue to a hybrid model, there's no live instruction on the remote days. That, in fact, is not the case if we truly go to a hybrid model. So if we have to go there, details will be fully delivered. So there's miscommunication. Please read the FAQ. We don't want misinformation out there. Can safe handles be used throughout the building on high traffic areas?
Say that again?
Safe handles. I'm not sure what that means, but
we're not changing any of the existing hardware in the schools, so I'm not sure what a safe handle is, but we're not changing any hardware.
okay, if people need technology needs, Sal, one more time, how should they address that?
If you are requesting technology for the alternative voluntary remote program, please indicate that on the survey. If you are requiring or asking for a district-provided device for the phase-in days, and/or if we do go fully remote, a survey will go out next week in order to develop that list.
Okay,
I just want to caution though, during the 9 phase-in days, 4 of which every student will not be in school, if your request is for technology during the days your child is not in school, we are prepared to meet that request. But that device will have to come back with the child every day they're in school, because we don't have that many extra devices that a child could have a device at home and an in-school device. So if you need the device in order to keep your child involved on the home days during those 8 days that were cohorted, that's wonderful, we'll help you out. But you're going to have to get the device back to school. Otherwise, when they get to school, and they may be using the device in school, they will have no device to use. Because we're fortunate enough to have one-on-one computing, meaning every kindergartner through 6th grader has a device dedicated to them, which will be fantastic for making sure kids aren't touching each other's computers or iPads. We don't have more than 1-to-1, and we do use them fairly regularly in school during the day.
Do kindergartners who are taking the bus have to bring all of their supplies to school on the first day? Do they bring a separate bag? Is there any chance we can drop it off prior?
I think that's a great question. I think the principals will take that one away with them, and that'll be in the communications to parents.
How many classes and grades will be allowed on the playground at once?
So we're going to organize the kids outside in their cohorts. Their cohort is their class, so one class would be in an area at a time.
How will we maintain social distancing at recess?
That'll be the responsibility of the supervising staff.
Is the plan to only check temperatures of everyone entering the building up until the 21st? Can that be continued for the entire year?
So we're going to evaluate that process through the first 2 weeks of school to see if it's practical.
Can you mandate there will be classrooms without students or staff members who have mask exemptions?
Can we mandate that? No.
What is the plan if after the first 2 weeks you feel it is unsafe to bring kids fully back into the building? I'm happy to address that.
Sure.
If after the first 2 weeks the board and administration feel it's unsafe to bring everyone back, we'll then look at whether or not the hybrid model or remote model makes sense. Will the school give parents the opportunity to switch to virtual or stay in school after the 2-week phase-in?
In order to plan appropriately for the number of students in the remote program or the number of students in class, we're asking people to make a commitment to one or the other. So I can't guarantee you that there will be an abundance of space in the remote program if you choose to start your year in class. But of course, circumstances change, emergencies arise, life changes, and we will certainly consider requests as they come in.
Okay, so this person has a lot of questions about the remote model, but one general question: after the first trimester, students who opted into the virtual model, can they switch after the first trimester?
Yeah, so we're prior to the end of the first trimester, we'll see what the lay of the land is and go back to parents and ask them about either the next trimester or potentially the year, and that decision will get made much further down the line.
Will sports equipment be used in PE classes?
Some sports equipment may be used in PE classrooms. We're going to attempt to limit that.
Where can I view class, grade, and school levels of active and closed COVID cases?
That's not information that we would necessarily keep. Probably would have to reach out to the Department of Health to look at cases in our area. But understand that so we're not going to gather that information in some place, but if there is a case in our school, we will be informing parents that there is a case in our school.
Are the mask breaks in addition to snack and lunch?
Yes.
For how long are these breaks?
That would be decided most likely on a classroom-by-classroom basis as a teacher sees fit for the needs of the child.
Will my child be able to bring a peanut butter sandwich for lunch if eating in the classroom? She has brought it in when they are in the lunchroom, so I am guessing she can still do so.
So the current board policy regarding allergies would indicate that during snack, you cannot bring allergens into the classroom, but during lunch, you can. That policy was developed when most of lunch was out of class and all of snack was in class. The board is going to look at that again at the August 25th board meeting.
What additional distancing measures will be provided to the remaining students in a scenario where one student has received a mask exemption?
We don't expect to have any specific accommodations for others in that classroom.
Will the exempted student be pushed beyond the 6 feet minimum distance to limit their interactions and spreading their germs?
The guidance is very clear from the Department of Health and the State Education Department that we're not supposed to discriminate against staff or children in those circumstances.
Would the students be affected academically if we choose to do remote learning for the first trimester?
I think everyone needs to understand that there is no way that any version of remote learning will ever match in-person learning.
Will there be someone sanitizing the play equipment outside every time a child touches something?
Now, play equipment will be cleaned once a day. And that's really a best practice that's being recommended by health officials.
When will the name of grade teachers be disclosed?
Students' teachers will be sent out in our normal time frame. It's usually like the last few days before school starts.
When can we expect to hear back regarding the aftercare program? Do they have a plan? I have heard nothing from them despite emailing my questions.
The before and after school program is a not independently operated not-for-profit that operates within our school. I am in touch with the director. Her expectation is that if we have school, that they have the before and after school program. She is, I believe that they're fully enrolled in the after school part, and there may be a few spots in the before school part. If parents have given their deposits and are registered, then they are in, but I'm not sure that there's other spaces available. That might open up a little bit, I guess, when parents opt into the remote program. I know that the director is kind of monitoring the situation, and as far as things like safety, they operate under guidance of the Office of Children and Family Services, which also have very strict guidelines about how child care have operated. And the Office of Children and Family Services have had programs throughout the state operating throughout the pandemic, even when schools were closed.
You mentioned fans are not troublesome at this time. I teach in a district on the North Shore, and they told us this morning that fans are not allowed to be used as they can add to the spread of germs. This needs to be addressed as it's crucial to the safety and health of students and staff. Thank you for the comment. We will definitely take that under advisement. How will a student whose parent does not fill out the health screen be kept from the classroom? Will they be met at the door allowing them in?
So, I'm sorry, a little distracted by the buzzing noise. Wonder if there's any chance anybody in Lakeside can fix that. But anyway, could you read that question again?
Yes. How will a student whose parent does not fill out the health screen be kept from the classroom?
So, anyone who doesn't fill out the health screen will be diverted within a short period of arrival.
Okay, there's a question about staffing and personal health days and how they'll be counted. I would ask that that question be asked to the principal or supervisor.
Yep.
I'm not sure where that's coming from. Will medication drop-off be handled the same this year? EpiPens, Benadryl, et cetera?
So I believe the nursing staff is having some meetings in the upcoming days to kind of address many of their start of school issues. So that'll be communicated to parents.
Regarding the tests for temperature checks within the phase-in period, what are the aspects that you are testing for? And what would be considered a success so that you would continue doing temperature checks at school? So I think that I originally thought the person meant, what are we testing for? We're testing for a temperature. And we're basically looking to make sure that it doesn't cause more problems. For instance, we don't back up kids for an hour outside in the rain while we're attempting to test their temperature. That would be one example of a problem. Yeah, and I'm happy to take this next one. It is so stressful making decisions about children's education versus a family member's health. Is there any chance we can learn who our children's teacher is early before the deadline? And here's what I would say to that. Every single one of the staff members who work in our buildings are going to absolutely do everything that they can to protect children and themselves, by the way, as best as we possibly can. So it's really not dependent on who an individual teacher is. We have the best staff there is, and everybody's, approaching this with the seriousness it deserves. And let me just add the practical issue with that.
it is conceivable that when students opt into the alternate voluntary remote program, that a significant number of children in one class, basically a lopsided enrollment by chance happens, and then the principals will have to reorganize the classrooms before the start of school. So telling you who your teacher is now could well be meaningless because we may have to reorganize around that before the start of school.
If children return after the first trimester, who will their teachers be?
So we basically will place students into the appropriate slots in the grade level classes, and again, that will depend on the inflow of students as we go, so we just want to keep the classes balanced as kids come back.
Will the teacher assignments still be coming by mail? There's a major slowdown going on, and many people in Merrick are only getting mail a few days per week.
For now, that's our only alternative. We'll look into see if we have another way of going.
Okay. There are some questions from one person about remote learning, so I'm just going to say, please come to the session on remote learning where all of that will be addressed. Okay, let me just keep looking. In addition to ensuring ventilation systems are working well, has there been any discussion about keeping windows open in classrooms, weather permitting?
So as I said earlier, people can use their windows like they did before. That's probably less of a viable source of fresh air than the ventilators, which pull in air and move it around the room.
If before and after school programs will be running, will this mean that kids from different cohorts will end up mixing before and after school?
Yes. So the before and after school program does not have enough children from each class to do separate groups. They will cohort across a grade level is basically their plan right now. But, you know, please understand, that's no different than, I think there's 600 children who are currently enrolled in the Little League. As we get into school year, children will be attending their various religious schools. Scouts will probably open up. Soccer will open up. So kids will be mixing and matching their cohorts in many venues beyond our school gates.
Okay, there's a comment debating a lot of different things, but I think I just want to pick out things that might relate to everyone. Many people are uncomfortable with less than 6-foot distance in the classroom. This should be accommodated, no questions asked, work it out.
We don't have the physical space in the building to work it out.
And that's why we have an option for people who are not comfortable,
Right.
And we certainly respect that. Then there's a comment about the flawed survey questions, and I think I'm happy to address that. So there's been lots of conversation, not only in the elementary district, but the high school district as well, about the wording of the questions. What we really were assessing in that survey is not preference. It was intent to send children to school. And in both the elementary district and the high school district, just for information, over 80% of children, over 80% of families indicated that they wanted their children to come to school every day. Again, we respect that that is not the decision that some families feel comfortable with. And you know, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to even send out that survey. So please, you know, we understand that not everybody is going to be comfortable, and we're doing the best that we can under these circumstances. So I hope you can appreciate that and understand it. Just a couple of more. Can you please explain what the 5th and 6th grade classes will be like in each of the 3 schools? Will kids be moving classrooms? Will teachers travel to the classrooms? Will Chatterton kids be switching?
So some generalities. When there is a departmentalized model, teachers will be going to the kids. Kids will not be moving about. My recommendation is that for more specifics than that, that the parent contact the building administration to understand how things will work in that building.
Can the superintendent and/or principals host a bi-weekly Zoom meeting to continue the conversation throughout the year?
I don't really want to commit to, well, first of all, are we talking about bi-weekly as in twice a week? Or are we talking about bi-weekly as every other week? That's always a confusion. I think that we have board meetings once a month. We can have that commentary there, and as additional meetings are necessary, we can stage those type of forums. And of course, as always, send your cards, emails, and letters to me, the other administrators in this room, and the building administrators at all times. And you know how to call us. I know you do, because you have. So keep that up.
And by the way, the board reads every email that you send. If anybody has questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're a tight community, and we need to remain closer right now to get through what we're going through. Another comment about any time a survey is requested, sending a text message. Some people are missing the emails. Okay, what happens if there is a suspected case of COVID-19 in a class, but not confirmed test? Is the class quarantined as a precaution?
So the directions that the Department of Health are giving us right now is, it depends. So the child who is suspected of having COVID-19 would be referred to the healthcare professional to do a differential diagnosis. So for instance, if the symptom is coughing, that may come from many, many illnesses, and probably more likely from something that's not COVID-19, given how low the incident rate of COVID-19 is in our community, and even lower among the subgroup of children. So they're sent out to their healthcare professional, and based on the differential diagnosis, if there is a possibility that it is COVID-19, then the health department will get involved, and we trigger all the quarantine rules.
Will parents be notified if a classroom student is exempt from wearing a mask? If not, why?
So no, parents will not be notified. Basically, it probably would be a violation of two federal laws, FERPA and HIPAA, because for the reasons why people are allowed to be exempted from them, that's why it would fall in those categories. But you all have children who will be there. I'm sure they'll see who doesn't have a mask on and come home and tell you.
What would be the process if someone comes to school in person and is uncomfortable and wants to flip to remote? They would contact the building principal.
Correct.
Great. I've been paying attention.
There you go.
What is the method the district is trying out for temperature taking? Are there multiple scanners or just one?
Multiple scanners. Thermometers.
Again, there's a question of the percentage of people that indicated they would send their kids hybrid compared to the percentage of people that said they would send their kids every day. That is not necessarily a matter of preferring one over the other. It's an indication of who would be sending kids in each of those models. And again, we were comfortable that over 80% said they would send their children 5 days a week.
Right, and just, to put that one to rest, the purpose of the study was not a survey of preference of which model we were going to open with. The purpose of the study, the survey, was to give us some indication of how many students might need to be accommodated in a virtual remote program, so we can figure out what we could potentially build upon. Now, something I think it's really kind of due to say this now, something that hasn't been mentioned yet in the last meeting is the financial reality that we're working under. So a couple of days ago, we got our first notice that we were due for a small amount of financial aid payment of only $50,000, and the state held back that $50,000. So those of you who've tuned into the news or to our board meetings know that our governor has frequently said that if the federal government doesn't backfill the state budget, that schools could lose up to 20% of their state aid. That holdback that happened just a couple days ago is the first indicator that the state is doing it. If they hold back our full state aid, that's about $1.3 million that could be held back. So we knew that was a potential all along. So we needed to get some information about parents, about how many kids we might need to accommodate in a remote model. And that was really the sole purpose of the survey.
Okay. What type of sanitizer will be used to clean the desk, playground, common spaces? Is it safe for the children?
Yeah, so the sanitizers that are being used, I should have looked this up yesterday. I believe they're on the EPA. It's either a CDC list or a CDC list that recommended the EPA list. But they are, I believe it's an EPA list that indicates that they are appropriate sanitizers to kill viruses such as COVID-19 as well as everything else. And they fit the state's guidelines for products that are appropriate for schools.
It seems like the Merrick School District is implementing plastic barriers in lieu of 6-foot distancing. Does the CDC say that that is okay?
So the district is implementing plastic barriers in addition to social distancing, but because we were unable to get 6 feet, we're adding the barriers. And that is in line with the New York State Health Department and the State Education Department guidance documents.
If someone's parent is quarantined due to, for example, exposure to a colleague with COVID-19, does that person's children get quarantined as well? I'll let you answer and I'll follow up.
Sure. So the general concept to keep in mind is that a contact to a sick person gets quarantined. The contacts of a contact do not. So specifically in this situation, is if a parent is under quarantine because they are potentially exposed, then their children are not under quarantine. But if the parent was sick, then those children, as contacts of the sick person, are quarantined.
So as a follow-up to that, and to address a question, as a Board of Education and as an administration, and speaking for the overwhelming majority of the parents, we cannot ask you strongly enough, if your children are not feeling well, please keep them home. These are extraordinary times. Someone made the comment yesterday that if a kid is kept home every time they have a cold, they would never be in school. Please understand the sensitivity that people feel right now based on what we are going through. And as a community, we need to look out for each other. And the reality is, as much as we try and as much as we plan, we cannot do this alone. We are depending on parents and staff to stay home, to keep children home if they are not feeling well. And to the question, yes, that will be communicated over and over again, and we cannot stress that enough. We just have a few more questions. Will hand sanitizer be made available, and will hand washing be encouraged?
So minimally, we will encourage or require children to wash their hands when they wash or sanitize their hands when they come into the school, before lunch, after lunch, and probably many using the bathrooms and many other times during the day if it's warranted. And we have appropriate hand sanitizers in every classroom. We'll have hallway units. Really in every space we have sanitizers for kids to use.
What is the criteria for putting a child who is going home sick from school into the isolation room?
If a child has symptoms related to a potentially communicable disease, the nurses would make the determination and place them into the isolation room. The parents would be called and asked them to pick them up, which raises a really important point that I made yesterday, is parents who are out there, make sure that you have a deep list of emergency contacts who are available to pick up your child if they are ill. And we will be collecting that information very soon. It's imperative that we have the correct information before school starts. So please start gathering that information today. Get your friends' phone numbers, whoever you might be sending, get them ready. And when we reach out to you, have that done. That's often something that is problematic for like weeks and weeks and weeks in the school year. Please take that as a parental responsibility immediately.
Will flu shots be mandatory this year?
Flu shots right now are not mandatory in this country or in this state. I'd encourage you to get a flu shot. I will probably be getting mine very soon. It would be very worthwhile.
That's all the questions that we have right now. So I think I'll just give another second or two if anybody wants to add anything else that we've not covered already. As I said, if you've asked many questions and I only got to some of them, please feel free to reach out to the building principal, the administration, the Board of Education. I assure you we are doing the best that we can possibly do. Every single one of our administrators, central office, building administrators, the Board of Education, we are trying to address issues to make sure that everybody is as safe as they could possibly be when they come back to school. The phase-in period is a critical one for us. It will be the opportunity to test out all of the practices and protocols that we're putting into place, and to make modifications with a fewer number of people in the building. The phase-in period will also give us the opportunity to really pay a lot of attention to each other, right? To the children, to our staff. This is a big adjustment. It's a big adjustment, and we know that it's going to take time in transition. So we would ask for everybody's patience and for us to work together as a community. That's what will make us as successful as we can be in this endeavor. For those of you from Chatterton that are watching, you know that Mr. Seinfeld is coming back to help us out, so we're delighted to have him. And our other principals, Mrs. Trenchney and Mrs. Galante, are also delighted to help however we can. Delighted is, you know, probably, I don't know, I'm delighted, so I figure they're delighted too. So I'm sure we are. So I think we've handled all the questions.
There's some people who sent a question or two after you said if there's any more questions.
Okay. So it's about mask breaks, and taking them off and barriers working. That's all in the FAQs. So if you want to go back to the FAQs, that would be great. If not, feel free to reach out, and we can certainly address any future concerns. There is a bathroom question. Is there a protocol for how often bathrooms are cleaned?
Bathroom surfaces, everything else, there will be protocols for cleaning. There will be cleaning schedules for all those pieces. We will document the cleaning of those.
Yeah. So we have one more community forum. It's on Thursday night at 7. It will go over the virtual model. But as always, you know, don't wait until then to communicate. Okay, we have great people, and we're here for everybody as much as we can possibly be.
Okay, let me say this in practical terms. If you have questions about the virtual model that you want discussed or answered during the session on the 20th, hold off to the morning of the 20th, because we will start looking at the questions for the forum with questions that were submitted from the morning of the 20th. So hold your questions if you got questions about the remote program until the morning of the 20th. I thank all the families who have watched and participated. We had a very active, list of questions. It's great. This forum was recorded. It'll be on YouTube. So you can watch it at any time. You can rewatch it. I'm sure it'll be great fun. We are hoping that we get such a good following on YouTube that we get ranked or rated so that we can get popularity along with it. All joking aside, though, this has really been an important part of our reentry to school. We're glad for the questions. We want them to keep coming. I'd like to thank the administrative team for participating, our board members for participating, and I have great confidence in our full school staff that they will make this work for you and your children and for us in the school. Thank you very much. All right, Brendan, take us out of YouTube, please.